So good afternoon once again. For today, let us go ahead and discuss the second module in our subject, Introduction to Arduino or Introduction to Robotics. So this module here comprises the lessons from number 8 to lesson number 12. And this is actually from Tech Factors. Okay? This particular slide na nakikita nyo, once again was actually bought by the University of the Cordilleras kay Tech Factors. So yan, we are lucky enough na magkaroon tayo ng ng ganitong klaseng presentation sa topic natin related to Arduino. Okay, so I hope ready na tayo na mapag-aralan yung mga topics natin for today. So let's go ahead and start with the first lesson. Pero before anything else, do you have any questions so far? So the lesson 8 for today's module is actually what we call the breadboard. Okay, so last week kasi, alam na natin kung anong itsura ni Arduino microcontroller, di ba? Pinakita ko sa inyo kung anong itsura nito. For today, we will talk about what we call the breadboard. Now, breadboard, okay, it's actually one of the most fundamental pieces when learning how to build those circuits na meron tayo. And in this particular lesson, especially dito sa focus ng module natin, nagagamit na tayo ng breadboard, you will learn a little bit about what breadboards are, what they are called, and how to use one. Especially once you are done, you should have a basic understanding of how breadboards work and be able to build a basic circuit on what we call the breadboards. Ano nga bang itsura ng breadboard? Mamaya ipapakita ko sa inyo. Pero if you were able to read the presentation beforehand, makikita nyo kung anong itsura ng breadboard natin, no? So, by the end of this lesson, or this discussion, you should be able to at least name and identify the parts of a breadboard, and you should be able to explain the use of a breadboard, the proper use of what we call the breadboards. Kasi may importance yan, dapat alam din natin kung paano siya gamitin para mas maging effective siya. Okay? Now, maybe you are familiar with this one, diba? So this is actually what we call an extension or extension cord. It is actually being used as a power extender. Diba? So, once you connect this to a socket, it will give additional sockets for the other appliances. Diba? Lalo kapag, say for example, for televisions, for PC. Now, this is actually a representation for the next part that we will have. And that is what we call the breadboard. So, the breadboard is used to create the circuits and connect different sensors and actuators to the Arduino board. It also refers to a solderless breadboard. Now, how can you relate the function of a breadboard to the function of an extension cord? It's actually very easy because, let's assume that the extension cord is the breadboard where we plug the LED lights. Diba? Now, the breadboard serves as the place for the trial of the LED lights. So, di ba kapag naglalagay kasi tayo ng more appliances sa mga extension cord natin, napapagana pa rin natin or kaya pa rin natin magbigay ng power dun sa mga appliances natin. It's actually the same function as like that. Solder, by the way, means a mixture of metals such as lead or tin that is melted and used to join metal parts together, or, in Tagalog, we call that as hinang. It requires no soldering, pero ang breadboard kasi nagagamitin natin in Arduino, it requires no soldering because the breadboards are just for temporary circuits. Unlike before, nung nag-aaral kami ng electronics, nung high school kami, kailangan naming maghinang or gumamit ng mga soldering iron para pagkabit-kabitin yung mga components na gusto naming mapagana. Well, luckily enough since na-introduce si Arduino natin, hindi na natin kailangan gawin yun. Diba? And a breadboard is used to create circuits and connect different sensors and actuators, as I have mentioned earlier. Now, the breadboard looks something like this. Ayan. Yeah? So, ganyan po ang itsura ng breadboard natin. So, if you were able to buy an Arduino kit, yan, usually, ito ang itsura niyan. Ang itsura niyan, ganyan. Ganyan po ang breadboard. Diba? So, the breadboard in our Tinkercad, para mas makita natin kung ano nga ba ang itsura ng breadboard natin, let's go to Tinkercad. Yan. So, this is how a breadboard looks like in Tinkercad. Okay. Now, since we are actually trying to achieve here a working prototype by the end of the semester, When we say prototype kasi, it's a process of testing an idea by creating a of preliminary model from which other forms are developed or copied. Now, since tinatawag natin yan ng working prototype, by the end of the entire course, yung ipepresent nyo sa akin na, na magiging working prototype nyo for this subject, na ipepresent nyo rin of course sa inquiry subject ninyo is actually a working prototype. Meaning, you will be using a simulation of Arduino or a physical Arduino kit if you have. Okay? Kaya nga prototype na yan. Hindi pa totally nagfa-function ng kompleto, but the idea or the concept is actually being shown using your prototype in the near future. Now, when we see terminal strip, it is actually located inside the breadboard. So it looks something like this. This allows you to stick a wire or the leg of any component into the exposed holes on a breadboard. And this is actually one of the very useful thing na gagamitin natin kapag gagawa tayo ng mga working prototype natin. Breadboards, tinatawag. Okay? So, now, let's try to take a look here at the example of a breadboard. Number 1, itong part na to, yung positive side, may mga pangalan yan eh. I want you to be familiar and remember the following parts of the breadboard. Itong part na to nakikita nyo dito, this is actually what we call power rails. Okay? Power rails. Now, the connection on the blue line rail na nakikita nyo dito is actually different from the red line. Itong magkakaiba lang ng color ng color sa ginamit, pero basically they are actually the same. So in this case, ito pala, this line here is actually different from this line. Okay? So magkaiba po siya, but then all of the lines horizontally in the power rails, especially in the positive side, is connected to one another. So pare-pareho siya. Unlike dito, they are negative. So, ang negative ay para kay negative lang. Ang positive ay para kay positive lang. Next, number 2 is what we call the serial connection from A1. Itong mga to. Diba? So, kung napansin natin, the serial connection from A1 to E1 or, so on and so forth hanggang dito, those are what we call vertical pins. Yan, vertical. This is horizontal, the power rails. Ang vertical pins naman natin in the breadboard, kung napansin nyo, yan, especially in the Tinkercad, diba? Na-highlight siya into green. That simply means that whatever things or components you connected here, dito sa part na to, and you connected here somewhere dito, for as long as kapantay niya, they are connected to one another. However, if you connect this one dito pa rin, okay, pareho lang din siya. Pwede pa rin natin siyang gamitin. Okay? And number 3 here, the center line, that is what we call the trench. Okay? The trench serves a very important purpose. If a dual line package or DIP chip is used, there is a separation of connection. Although, there are both vertical, pwede pa rin naman siyang gumana. Halimbawa, kung nagsaksak ka dito ng resistor, tapos nagsaksak ka dito ng anode, for example, like the LED part, diba? Gagana pa rin naman yan. Okay? There is a separation of connection. Yun nga lang, di ba? This means that if a connection is made to each side of the IC, there will be no interference between the functionality of the leg on the opposite side. So, pwede pa rin yan, pero there are modules kasi na hindi siya gumagana. Pero based on my experience, like LED lang naman, possible pa rin naman na gumana yan. Okay? So, napaka-basic lang. Now, let's try to evaluate the image below. Itong nakikita natin na image na to. Teka, ba't ko napindot to? I-rotate ko nga ito. Ayan, rotate natin na parang ganyan. Now, let's try to check and see if the following here is actually connected or not connected. So, let's try to evaluate. A23 to E23. A23 to E23, this is connected. So, pagka naglagay ka dito ng isang component, tapos naglagay ka dito ng isang wire, connected po siya. Next, D14 to H14. D14 to H14. Okay? This is actually not connected to the sense na depende sa module na gagamitin natin. Okay, so D14 to H14. For example, ito, tapos i-connect mo siya dito. It is actually connected na hindi connected, pero depende kasi yan. Pagka nandun na tayo sa may mga advanced na bagay na papakita ko sa inyo, marirealize natin na pwede siyang mapag-connect talaga. Okay, number 3, C10 to C20. C10 dito hanggang kay C20. Hanggang dito kay C20. Is it connected or not? C10 to C20. It's actually, in a sense, they are still connected. Okay? So, magiging connected yan mamaya. Papakita ko sa inyo kapag nandun na tayo sa may project natin. Number 4, a link from plus red or the positive red here on the left side to the positive right on the right side. Positive red on the right side. That's number 4. Are they connected? They are not connected actually. Mamaya, papakita ko rin sa inyo yan mamaya. Okay? Number 5, link from B9. For example, from B9 ato hanggang kay D9. Yan. Number 5, that is connected, obviously. G7 to J7, G7 to J7. Okay? That is connected. So, number 7, for example, itong E10 to F10. From E10 to F10, ito, once again, they can be connected or not connected. Possible siya in between. Number 8 na tayo. Link between negative blue on the lower part, nandito, and middle part, ito. They are connected. Yung kanina kasi, left side, tapos right side ng red. Diba? Not connected. Itong dalawang to, itong part na to. Ang connected lang is itong positive dito lang sa line niya na to. At saka dito. Pero nakakapagtaka kasi, diba? Medyo weird tong part na to, na yung negative, the link between the negative blue, dito sa my lower part, left side, and the blue on the middle part, they can actually be connected together. So, pagka naglagay tayo ng wire pala dito, tapos inikot natin yung wire na yan pa dito, tapos meron kang component dito, magiging connected pa rin siya. Okay? Next. Number 9 tayo. Link between negative blue lower part, left side, negative blue middle part, right side. Dito. Middle and middle. So, connected yan. Diba? Ito naman, yung red, tapos yung blue, of course, not connected siya. Diba? Napakadaling intindihin yan. So, mamaya magpapakita ako ng example sa inyo kung paano nga ba siya totally nag-work ng mas maayos. Okay? So, once again, power rails. We have the power rail, the terminal strips, the center divider, and yeah, the terminal strips once again. So, ito siya. Power rails, the vertical pins, and the trench, or yung tinatawag lang natin yan na center. Diba? Yung center divider. Alright. That is breadboard. So, ganyan po ang itsura ng breadboard, no? Para hindi kayo magtaka in person. So, ito nakikita nyo kasi sa may monitor ninyo, it's actually the small breadboard version. So, itong nakikita nyo dito, it's actually the standard breadboard na nakikita nyo sa mga kit once na bumili kayo ng Arduino kit ninyo. Alright, so let's proceed with the next lesson, which is actually the lesson 9, which we will talk about what we call the circuits and LED. Okay, so meron tayo ditong experiment using two different types of circuits. So we have what we call the series and parallel circuits, which is very important for you to be very familiar with at the same time. Kailangan alam nyo to Kailangan alam nyo kung anong ibig sabihin ng series and parallel circuits. Now, let's try to take a look at this example here. So, say for example, let's say you are the engineer, you need to design a system where one switch can turn on multiple lights. Yan. An example might be a string of holiday lights, and now you construct both a series circuit and a parallel circuit using the batteries, wires, and bulbs provided to you. Your series will now look something like this in the drawing. So, meron kang battery, kaya niyang pailawin to, kaya niya ring pailawin to. Diba? So, parang ganun yun. Parang ganun yung idea natin. That's why we have actually the following circuit connection. When we say parallel connection or parallel circuit connection, it's actually an electrical connection that has two or more paths for the current to flow in which the loads are parallel to each other. So, in this example, the diagram here na nakikita nyo, which also I included the different electric or the component electronic diagram, itong mga to, mga schematic symbol natin, para may idea kayo kung ano nga ba yung mga schematic symbols na pwede natin gamitin, itong mga schematic wirings natin, no? So, it shows 4 paths. We have here the battery. Now, the voltage is the same across each component. So, you have the LED. Yan, you have the LED. And each path will now receive 9 volts from the source. So in this case, the source is the battery. The loads are parallel to each other. The loads are the LED lights. So in a point of view ng Arduino natin na yan, so meron kang Arduino board dito, meron kang magpa-power. So Yan, you have 4 LED. So, parallel circuit, ganun siya. Iisa lang yung source niya, pero parallel lahat ng mga connections natin, yung mga loads natin. Meanwhile, when we say series circuit connection, it's an electrical connection that is connected along a single path where the current flows in the same direction. The difference between the two is for the series circuit, it has only one path to follow with only one load. So kanina, di ba, meron kang multiple path. Ito naman, the greater the number of resistors, the lesser the energy will pass through it. Di ba, nabagit ko rin to sa inyo nung last week. Pag gumagamit tayo ng resistors, the lower the value of your resistor, of course, yeah, the lower value of your resistors, the brighter your LED. The higher the value of your resistors, the less brighter your LED is. Magiging dim siya. So, this is an example of the schematic wiring. You have the 9 volts, tapos meron ka dito yung voltage mo. You have the following resistors, 3 resistors. Tapos meron ka lang isang load dito na LED. So, in a sense ng Arduino, using the breadboard, it looks something like this. Yan. Meanwhile, when we say switch connection or circuit connection, it is actually installed on one path. So, meron ka lang ditong isang path that will now allow or disallow the flow of current to device from the source. So, this time, you will now be using what we call the switch. It can be a form of button, parang ganyan, di ba? It can be in a form of button or other switches na available natin. So, available sa kit mo. So, in this case, ang pinaka-common dyan is actually the button. Diba? So, it looks something like that. Pagka pinindot mo to, mag-on si LED. Pagka pinindot mo ulit, mag-off si LED. Ganun yung pinaka-basic example na pwede nating maibigay dyan. Okay? Now, when we talked about LED or the light-emitting diode, I want you to be very, very familiar with this one. The LED, okay, it's a semiconductor diode. Yan. So, ang electronic symbol niyan, ganyan. It converts electrical energy into electromagnetic radiation at the visible and near infrared frequencies. Now, LEDs are like tiny bulbs, light bulbs, and they are required to have less power to light up by comparison. So, kung titingnan natin kasi maigi yung itsura ng LED natin dito, I want you to be very familiar and remember, okay? Ito, tatandaan nyo tong part na to. Sa LED kasi, you have the short pin and the large pin. Teka, ipakita ko lang, kuha lang ako dito ng LED natin para mas pakita ko sa inyo in person, no? So, pwede kayong mag-Tinkercad. Pwede nyo kunin si Tinkercad. Tapos, pwede nyo i-drag dito yung LED natin. So, kung napansin nyo, meron yung mas mahaba, meron yung mas maiksi. Now, the short pin is actually what we called the ground. Okay? The short pin, usually, that is the ground or, okay, ito yan, no? This is the ground or what we call the cathode. Ito siya pagka kuha tayo ng LED dito. Okay, malilito, no? Ganyan ang itsura ng LED, no? So, ganyan. So, may papansin nyo dito kung alin dyan ang mas maiksi and alin dyan ang mas mahaba na part ng LED natin. Ayan. So, yung mas maiksi, that is the negative. Okay, that is the negative. And the longer pin, it has to be connected to any of the digital pins, yung long. Yung positive natin, which is anode. Pag cathode, the negative. So, tandaan natin na ang cathode will always be connected to the ground, the GND of our Arduino. So, kung idadrag natin tong Arduino natin dito, meron ka dito kasing, diba? You have the following pins. You have the digital pins. You have from 0 to 13. You have the ground. So, kapag ka naglalagay ka ng LED, you have to remember that the cathode, okay, the cathode is the negative. So, lagi siyang nasa ground. Tandaan natin yan, ha? Nasa ground po lagi yan. Yan. Question so far? Before we proceed? Okay, wala naman, no? Okay. So, let's try to hindi na natin kailangan gawin tong mga electronic symbol na to. Yeah. Let's skip this part. Yan, let's skip this part. Let's actually move on to the very first project dito sa may Arduino natin, the basic connection with LED and resistor. So, In this lesson, we will actually build a few simple LED circuits. And nowadays, people are investing more on LEDs due to their energy efficiency. And say for example, for home lighting, office lighting and automobile, street lighting and etc. are all being implemented using LED. So in this particular lesson, in this part of the lesson, uh, you will know how to use an Arduino and control the LEDs. This is actually a pretty simple project, and most of the beginners in Arduino starts by creating a very basic project using LED. Okay, so pakita ko sa inyo dito, meron tayong Tinkercad. Papakita ko rin sa inyo dito in live yung Arduino natin para ma-differentiate natin siya. Okay, so by the end of this discussion, you should be able to at least build and key in the code based on the circuit diagram. Yan. So, alam na siguro natin yung parts ng Arduino, no? Alam na natin, we have the digital pin, we have the analog pin, you have the reset button, you have the TX, the RX, the power source, and anything. Okay. Alam na rin natin si breadboard. Diba? Alam na rin natin kung alin dyan ng mga magkakadugtong. We also have here the wires. Okay. Yung wires natin, prepare ko lang din, no? Yung wires natin, they look something like this. Yan. Sa kit ninyo, makikita nyo yung wires ninyo. Napakadami niyan eh. Ayan. Pag bumili kayo ng kit, napakadami. Ayan. Di ba? So, ilagay na natin yan dito sa gilid ko para makakita nyo na. Yan. We also have here the wire for the power source, yan, IPv4, which is actually very frustrating kasi napakaiksi. Pero in my case, since meron akong extender dito, yan. So, ito yun, no? Maiksi yan eh. Napaka-iksi yan yung mga built-in. So, ako kasi meron akong extrang extenders dito. Actually, pwede rin kayo bumili ng sarili nyong extender, ng USB extender, like for only 150 pesos lang naman siya sa Lazada. In my case, 200 kasi 5 meters. Gusto ko kasing umabot hanggang labas. Yan. We also have here the resistors. So, yung resistors natin, again, the lesser value, the brighter your LED will be. So, it will look something like this, no? Lagay ko lang yan dito. And we have the LEDs. So, yung LEDs natin, madami yan, no? Ganyan ang, LED natin. So, let's talk about the traffic light. What is actually the importance of traffic lights? Well, in fact, if you were able to read the module 2, this will be your performance task. Diba? Pero, tignan natin. Kasi ang traffic light na to, it's actually very useful pagdating sa, of course, in regulating the traffic. Diba? The use of personal vehicles, for example, it's actually very common nowadays. And as a result, the number of those vehicles on the roads are exponentially increasing. That's why the roads without any supervision or guidance can lead into traffic congestions and accidents. Diyan ngayon kasi pumapasok si traffic light natin. Si traffic lights, or in other words, we call this as somehow traffic signals, they are signaling devices. Diba? They are used to control the flow of traffic, and generally, they are positioned at junctions or intersections. Especially here in Baguio, you have traffic lights. You can see traffic lights sa may part ng Harrison Road, di ba? Now, it can actually, the traffic lights will provide instructions to the users, drivers or pedestrians man yan, by displaying the traffic lights or the traffic light colors. So, you have here the red, you have here the yellow, you have here the green. Di ba? Pag sinabi natin green, alam naman natin na yung traffic, yung mga sasakyan, pwede na mag-go. Pag nag-yellow, ibig sabihin, it's actually the interval between the green and the red. Diba? Red means stop. And the system must be used to control the traffic lights for smooth and safe movement of those traffic. Kaya nga, by the end of this module kasi, gagawa kayo mismo ng simulation ng traffic light using Arduino, which is actually very easy. Diba? Now, let's talk about what is the connection of traffic lights in terms of robotics. Are they considered as robots? Actually, yes. Diba? Because, for your information, the MCU or the microcontroller that is being used inside or that is being installed inside the traffic light, there are actually not, although in a sense hindi siya Arduino, pero there is still a microcontroller inside those traffic lights, and those traffic lights can be controlled manually or can be programmed automatically. So yes, we can consider traffic lights as a robot kasi pwede siyang, 'di ba? It can help us, it can help motorists, pedestrians to have a safe environment or safe road, road situations pa rin. Diba? So, let's try to create here a very basic blinking LED. Yan. So, napakadaling intindihan, no, for those students na walang Arduino board. Magpapakita kasi ako lagi sa inyo ng basic na schematics. So, using Tinkercad, i-drag nyo lang dito yung breadboard ninyo and of course, the Arduino board ninyo. Daglan natin. So, let us actually try to do this. So, you have the LED. Yan. That's the very first thing. Kahit saan nyo siya pwedeng ilagay, okay lang yan. And remember, the cathode is always on the ground. Yeah? So, in reality, by the way, FYI po ha, I always prefer to put black wires sa ground natin. So, kapag sinabi nating negative, lagi ko nilalagyan yan ng ground. Yan. So, lagi ko nilalagyan yan ng ground. Paano po ba palitan yung color natin dito? Just simply go here sa may part na to and click on black. Yan. So, meron tayong ganyan. Next is what we call the resistors. So, we can actually try to drag the resistors dito. Kung napansin nyo, no? The LED here, sabi ko nga kanina yung sa breadboard, pantay-pantay yan. So, di ba? Ibig sabihin, this connection and this connection is actually the same connection. They can work as the same. Yan. So, drag natin si resistor natin. Let's put the resistor dito sa tapat ng anode natin. And we can simply rotate the resistor by clicking this button here. Yan. We can change the value of the resistor if you want. Yan. Pero in this case, nasan ba yung pag-change natin ng value ng resistor? Hindi ko lang makita. Ayun. So, the resistance value is actually in 1 kilo. 1K. Ba? Pwede ko rin siyang baguhin later on. Next, let's try to put here a wire. Okay? I hope sumusunod kayo, no? Sumusunod kayo ng live, no? Para mas maintindihan natin. So, you have here another, let's put a wire dito. So, di ba pantay-pantay to lahat ng to eh. So, let's put a wire somewhere here. Yan. And let's place the wire in the digital pin connection number 2 dito. So, we'd like to change the color into red. So, ganyan ang napaka-basic natin na schematic diagram. Okay? A very basic schematic diagram. So, the idea of this one is actually for us to blink the LED. Okay, so we will try to blink this LED. Siyempre, hindi pa gagana yan. Diba? Kasi, this time, we have to put in some code. So, let's go here and click the code. Tapos, punta kayo dito sa may blocks natin. Let's change the edit mode into text. Let's click on continue. Now, for the edit mode, as I have mentioned before, it's actually in C++ code. And whenever we start coding our program in C++, we always have this kind of, code or methods at the beginning. So we have here the setup. The setup is where you will be placing or setting up your connections. So in this case, the setup, before putting something in the setup, let's try to declare a variable here and name that as LED. Tapos papangalanan ko yan as LED and I'll put a value of 2. Now, saan nga ba nanggaling or saan ko kinuha si 2? The 2 value actually came from here. Dito sa may digital number 2 na pin natin. So, ibig sabihin, whatever LED variable na dineclare mo dito, you should give them a value in where the connection is coming from. In this case, digital number 2 pin. So, yun yung unang-una, no? You have to declare a variable. Next, inside the setup, dito ngayon tayo papasok. Okay, this is where we will be setting up the the pin or the LED. So in this case, we will be using what we call the pin mode method. Yan. Yung pin mode method natin kasi, dito natin ilalagay si LED na create natin kanina. And since LED is actually an output, ang purpose lang naman talaga niya is umilaw, that is considered as an output. Tandaan nyo yun ha. LED is an output. Buttons are input kasi you are trying to put something, di ba? You are inputting, you are pressing something. So in this case, LEDs are output. So pin mode is actually a method where we will be placing the connection. In this case, it's actually in the digital 2 and the output itself. So okay na yung setup natin, no? Now, let's go here sa may loop natin. Loop. Para mapailaw natin yan, we have what we call the digital write method. The digital write method is actually a method where we can simply turn on or turn off the LED. So ano yung gusto natin ditong i-turn on? We can simply turn on the LED and by simply putting here the pin, kung ano yung gusto mong i-turn on, using high or inputting high. Again, high simply on is simply on. Yan. So LED on. So at the start or the beginning of our simulation, automatic na nag-setup na yan, 'di ba? Nag-setup na yan. And paulit-ulit yan na maglo-loop dito sa method na to. Okay. So let's try to give a delay. Okay? We can simply put here a delay of like 1,000. 1,000 is actually in a sense of milliseconds. Tandaan natin yan ha. 1,000 milliseconds is equivalent to 1 second. So kapag naglagay ako dito ng 100 milliseconds, mabilis yan, parang blink lang. 1,000 para 1 second lang yung pag-blink natin. Okay? So after a delay of 1 second, magkakaroon ulit tayo dito ng digital write. Pero this time, I would like to turn off. Yan. I would like to turn off the LED. So, meron tayong ganyan. Diba? Napaka-basic ng code natin, no? Mas mahirap yung ginawa natin ng computer programming 12p. Ito lang. Kung gusto mong pailawin yung LED mo, ganyan lang. Ganyan lang siya. So, tingnan natin. I-run natin yan. Let's click on Start Simulation. Yan. And as you can see, the LED is actually blinking, pero hindi lang masyadong nakikita dito. Now, tingnan natin, let's adjust the resistance value. Ayan. Nung in-adjust ko yung resistance value dito, ginawa ko siyang like, yung 1 ohm mismo, smaller. Ibig sabihin, ito kasi 1,000, di ba? 1,000 yan 1,000 ohms. So, ibig sabihin, pag 1,000 ohm, malaki, di ba? So, expect mo na yung ilaw mo medyo dim. So, pero nung in-adjust ko siya into 1 ohm, ayan, nagkakaroon na siya ng, ayan, ng exclamation point. Kasi, in reality po, once you actually tried to use a very small amount of resistor sa may LED mo, hindi naman siya sasabog. Okay? Don't worry. Hindi naman po siya sasabog. Pero, yan yung cause kung bakit napupundi yung LED natin. Di ba? So, kung i-click natin ito, nakalagay dito, kung bakit yan may exclamation point, nasa na yun? Hindi magpakita. Pero kanina, nakikita nyo, no? Ito. Ayun. Saan yan? Yan. So, current through LED, hindi lang makita. Pero, basically, sinasabi niya is, yan, minimum of, hindi lang makita kasi kailangan, ewan ko ba, diba? Pero in most of my cases, ang ginagamit ko dyan is 100 ohms lang para mas maganda. Diba? So every 1,000 milliseconds, nagbi-blink si LED mo. Now, let's try to create this one in using the physical Arduino kit. Teka lang, i-open ko lang yung ano natin dito, no? Yung camera ko. Para mas makita natin. Yan. So, nakikita naman, no? Okay. So, we have here the breadboard. We have here the Arduino kit. The Arduino microcontroller itself. Let's try to place this. Yan, di ba? So, kapag pinailaw mo na, or sinaksak mo na siya, of course, automatic iilaw na yan. Ayan, di ba? Next, we have the LED. We have the resistors. And we have the resistors and we have the pin. So, according to our schematics here, which is actually very easy, lagay ko lang muna dito yan. Mahaba-haba naman ito. Ayan. According here, from the breadboard, lagay natin si ano natin, no? Si LED natin somewhere. Siguro somewhere na lang dito. Ayan. So, the smaller, ito, di ba, yung mas maiksi. Ito siya. Mas mahaba kay positive. Mas mahaba kay positive, mas maiksi. Ayan. Teka lang, nag-focus na rin sa wakas. Next, lagyan natin si resistor. Yung resistor, lalagay ko siya sa baba lang nito para magkapantay siya. Yan. So, dyan na siya, no? Tapos gamit tayo ng wire dito in which yung wire ngayon, kapantay lang nung sa baba ng resistor. Ayan, oh. Tapos, I'm gonna put this sa may number 2 natin. Saan yung number 2? Sa may Arduino natin. 1, 2. Ayan. Hindi masyado makita. Ayan. So, nasa number 2 na siya. And next, yung ito. So, may positive, the negative side. Ganun din. Pero this time, lagyan na natin siya kay negative. Asan yung negative ko dito? Ayan. Of course, kung napapansin nyo, gumana yan kasi meron na akong ginawang code kanina. Asan ba yung code na ginawa ko? Okay. Basically, we can simply copy and paste the code here. Ito, yung ginawa natin na code earlier. So, we have the pin mode, LED output, and you have the digital write methods. So, kung napansin natin, ganyan po siya in person. So, kung medyo, hindi gaano maliwanag yung ilaw ko, ibig sabihin, mataas yung palitan ko ng resistor value, yung mas mababa, para makita niyo yung ilaw. So, in the next examples natin for the next week, syempre, gagamit tayo ng mga RGB lights, yung mga ganun na, di ba? Para makontrol na natin yung RGB natin. So, palitan ko lang ng resistor ito. Ayan. Ayun, nakita nyo, mas maliwanag ang buhay. Diba? Mas maliwanag ang nangyari sa natin. Sa LED natin. Question so far? Hopefully, ginagawa nyo rin to on your end, no? Para mas maano natin. Now, the question here is that, what if I would like to add some more LED lights dito? So, we can simply do that by, number 1, pwede ka ulit dito mag-declare ng panibagong variable, which is LED2. Ngayon siya. And inside the setup, you can now simply put them. Tapos dito sa my digital write, instead na LED2 or LED lang ang naka-high, pwede mong ilagay dito na yung initially, the LED2 is also in low. So, nag-alternate na siya. Nag-alternate blinking na siya. So, once na namatay na si LED1 natin, and si LED2 naman natin will actually turn on. So, alternate ang mangyayari dyan. High. Ayan. So, in order for us to upload our code here, we can just simply click on upload dito. Ito sa may upload na nakikita nyo on my screen. And walang nangyari dito kasi hindi pa natin nilalagyan ng panibagong color ng LED. So, let's try to put here another sets of LED and another set of resistors para makita natin siya. So, maglagay tayo ulit dito ng mas mahaba. Okay. Green naman to, no? Para taka. Dito na lang. Oops, sorry. Nagalaw. And so, ilagay ko yan dito. Tapos, si positive natin, na kay number 3, no? So, lagyan natin to ngayon kay number 3. Ayan. Oops. Ayaw pumasok sa number 3. Tapos yung ground natin, pwede tayo ulit maglagay ng panibagong ground kung gusto nyo. You know, it actually doesn't really matter, pero minsan mas maganda kung maglagay tayo ng multiple grounds. Ayan. Ayaw lang umilaw dito, no? I-upload ko lang ulit. Hindi ko kasi makita eh. Asan yun? Ito. Ayan. Baka pundido. Ito yata yung sira ko na ano. Diba? So, you got the idea, no? You got the idea. Yan na lang natin to. Teka, ayaw umandar nung iba kanina. Teka lang. Ayusin ko lang ito. Baka napundi. The negative. Teka, ano ba tong resistor ko na to? Tama na, mama. Maliit na. Tayo dito na lang. Ito yung dapat maliit ang kamay mo dito eh, para mas maging maganda yung itsura eh. Tapos yung number 3. Ayan. Okay lang yan. It happens some other time, di ba? So, kapag gagawin nyo yan sa Tinkercad, mas maganda. Mas madali nyo siyang makikita ngayon dito sa Tinkercad kasi makikita nyo na ilaw na rin talaga siya. Pero, if parang ganito, di ba? May mga times na mali lang yung pagkaka-place ko. Anyways, dito tayo sa Tinkercad. Di ba? So, pwede ngayon pwede nating i-stop yung simulation natin. We can put another stuff here like tanggalin natin yung code. Another LED, for example, dito. Tapos, another resistor. You can do this, by the way. You can always do this. So, may resistor ka dyan. Tapos, meron ka ulit ditong value na kay number 3 na. Diba? Tapos, ito. Pupunta mo ulit siya kay ground. Oops. Ganyan siya. So, pwedeng dito. Mismo. Okay? Do you have any questions so far before we proceed? LED 2. Diba, madali lang naman ng Arduino, no? Napakadaling gamitin. It's actually very useful na rin, di ba? And the way on how we implement Arduino is actually very easy because all you have to do dito sa may Tinkercad natin is to simply drag and drop everything, di ba? And makikita natin na everything is actually working perfectly fine. And easy. Napaka-easy niyang gamitin. Di ba? Question so far? So, kung gusto mo maglagay ng panibago pang LED, gawin mo lang yung ganito. Kung paano natin sinet up si one LED tapos dire-diretso na yan. Okay? So, next, let's actually go dito sa may project natin or sa may problem. Okay. Diba? So, once again, the higher the resistance value, the lower energy that will flow, and vice versa. So, tandaan po natin yan para mag-ingat tayo kasi we have to be very, very careful all the time because this is actually how how dim your LED lights will be in the future. Okay? So, let's move on. Let's proceed with our next topic here. Ito. Now, LED, by the way, will not work when placed backwards. You don't have to worry about whether it will be damaged as long as there is a series of resistors of at least 100 ohms next to it. The LED will survive the experience. Unlike yung mga dati kasi na, umuusok kasi. In this case, hindi na. Pero, using an LED without a series resistor is a surefire way to kill it. You'll see a bright flash and it may turn dark. So, yes, you have to always use a resistor. Actually, there is yung parang ginagawa namin dati. Meron yung pang shortcut nito eh. Yung ididiretso mo mismo punta tayo dun sa code natin, no? Tanggalin ko lang itong LED to natin. Basically, you get the idea, no? LED. So, instead na 2, meron yung itatabi mo siya mismo dito sa may ground. Pwede mo siyang ilagay yung mas maiksi sa ground. Pero itatabi mo siya kay 13 or kay 12. Parang ganyan lang siya. Ayan. So, pero anong number nito? It's number 12. Yan. So, may mga time na ginagawa ko to eh. Pero, syempre for the sake nito, hindi ko na lang gagawin. Yeah, hindi ko na lang gagawin. Pero, gagawin ko pero para maipakita ko lang sa inyo na possible pa rin siya. Ayun. Kahit walang resistors. Pero, syempre, hanggang isa lang ang kaya niyan. Hanggang isa lang ang kaya niyan. Okay, next. Now, I want you to do this at home. Actually, madali lang to eh. All you have to do is to simply get some papers lang na kung saan parang isa-simulate nyo lang yung color mixing nila, di ba? So, you will create like red, blue, green. You will simply mix them. Yan. Tapos, parang kukuha ka lang ng paper or at least anything na pwede mong ipang takip. Tapos, you can eventually see how the colors or the LED lights are combining to one another. Diba? So, red and blue, we have purple. Red and green, we have yellow. Blue and green, we have sky blue. Ano to? Something like that. So, you can do this at home. Pwede. Napakadali lang gamitin yan. Gawin yan. Actually. Okay. So, ito naman, this is an alternate blinking LED. Yan. Diba? This is another way for us to do the alternating LED way. LED. So, yung kanina kasi, kung napansin natin yung resistor natin, punta tayo dito. Yung resistor natin, nandito siya sa may ito, tapos diretso siya dito sa may number 2. In this case, the resistor is actually on the positive side. Diniretso mo siya dito. Okay, this is another or alternative way for us to do this. Saan po ilalagay yung code ng alin po? Mr. Craig, sorry, ngayon ko lang nabasa yung comment nyo, no? Ayan. 1 GND, tapos multiple LEDs. Sige, mamaya, pag-aaralan natin yan. Kung 1 GND, parang ito, no? Dito na kasi tayo actually, Mr. Mark Adam Tulay, no? 1 GND, kung napansin nyo, possible pa rin yan. Nandito yan. So, pero multiple resistors yan. Kung sa Tinkercad, Mr. Craig, dito po, click on code, then go to edit mode, tapos change that to text. Yan. So, try natin gawin ito. Itong basic connection with LED and resistor, pero alternating, no? Gawin muna natin siya dito. For example, you have an LED here, and another LED which is somehow green naman, no? Yan. Gusto ko dito is 7 and 8 naman yung placement natin. So, this will now be placed somewhere in number 8. Palitan ko yung color niya into red. This will now be placed into the green. This is in color green. Tapos, take note, the resistor, yan, no? Connected sila, no? Nilagay ko siya dito ngayon. Andyan. Tapos, andito. Let me change the value here into like this lang. Mga 100 na lang muna. Yan. Tapos yung ground natin. Tignan natin. Ito. Magiging black yan. Diba? Unlike yung kanina, kung napansin nyo, this is actually a different story naman. Kasi nga, yung positive natin, ito. Diretso siya. Diba? Diretso. This is actually an alternate way. Tignan natin if this is actually will work properly. Yan. Tapos, gayahin lang natin yung code. Napakadali ng code natin dito eh, no? So, we have, dito na lang ako mag-code para makita ninyo. Copy na lang natin. You have here, LED1 is equal to 7, LED2 is equal to 8, tapos LED1, both of them are output, tapos si loop natin, digital write, LED1, low, tapos copy lang ulit natin, this is LED2, this is high, delay up to 1000 milliseconds, so let's turn them off. Ayan. Tapos, syempre, wag natin kalimutang maglagay ng mga indention. Lagay nga natin dito yan. Yan. Oops, may mali ako. Yan, ang sinasabi niya, no, kung may mali rin, no, ang galing. Parang sa Java rin. Anong nakalagay dito? LED was not declared in this scope. So, LED1 dapat yan. Ayan. So, nakikita natin, hindi pa siya gumagana. So, let's try to, let's try to make this work. Let's try to see kung paano siya gagana. Oops. Ano ba to? Nakakaano lang tong ano na to. Medyo weird kasi tong ayun. Kung gumana yung isa, tingnan natin ulit yung code. Digital write, LED1, LED2 lang ang naka-open, which is in number 8. Diba? So, lagay tayo dito ng i-hide natin ito. Low. Ayan. Ayan, nagpapakita na. Sige. Lagyan natin din ng delay kasi walang delay kaya hindi masyado makikita. Delay up to 1000 dito sa may last part. Let me change the resistor value. 100, 100, okay. Ayun, di ba? So, nag-line up na siya pareho. So, this is also possible, guys. Take note, pwede mong idiretso si anode mo kay number agad, di ba? Pwede mong idiretso si anode mo kay number agad. And at the same time, pwede mo rin siyang idiretso yung mismong resistor mo na kay cathode. So, possible yan. So, gawin natin siya dito, no, kay Arduino natin. So, ginawa ko lang siya muna dito kay eto. So, you have two LEDs. You have here and the green, and you have the green. Yung may mga kit, no, sa advantage talaga. Yung may mga kit kasi at least ma-advance mo to, ma-experience mo na rin siya agad at the same time. So, pwede kong ilagay ito sa 7. Yung si green na kay 7, no? Green na kay 7. Diretso ko siya dito. Tapos si red na kay 8. Diretso ko siya dito. Take note the way how I place the components. Pantay-pantay siya depende dun sa breadboard positioning niya, no? So, pantay-pantay siya dapat. Then we have here a resistor. Yung resistor natin naka-jump kay positive. Yan. So, you can actually do this as an alternate way, by the way. So, ito yung question mo. If paano kung multiple LED pero isa lang yung ground na ginagamit mo? Pwede naman yan. Ito. Lagay ko ngayon ito kay GNT. And let me copy the code. Nasaan yung Arduino ano natin ito? Let me upload the code. And let's see. Yeah, nagko-compile yung sketch. And makikita mo kasi dito, once na okay na, no, nag-done compiling na. Tapos, ito na nakakapagtaka eh, bakit hindi siya umiilaw. May abnormal yata tong ano ko. Abnormal yata tong LED ko. Ayun, umiilaw naman. Ano lang, hindi lang makita. Umiilaw siya kanina eh. Umiilaw siya kanina. And I think, ano lang, paltan ko na nga lang ng ano, LED. Mas mahaba dito. Abnoy. Bakit kaya ayaw umilaw? Dito okay naman eh. Anyways, kanina pa to Nagdolo ko tong aking Arduino kit. Yeah, you get the idea, no? You get the idea. So, ganito rin naman siya. Same lang nito yan. Yan. Pakita ulit yung code. Sige, pakita natin yung code. Yan. Yan. Sige, i-copy nyo muna yung code para may sample kayo. Yun, umiilaw. Ano lang, mali yata yung resistor ko. Hindi ko napansin. Umiilaw, napundi. Oo. Napupundi lang siya. Okay? Okay na? Nakapin niyo yung code? Okay, sige. Let's move on to our next part. Discussion. Okay? This is only an optional activity. Okay? Pero basically, you can create an LED lantern using basic components. Ito. Diba? And a resistor. So, your project will be graded by the following criteria. Pero hindi ito talaga yung activity nyo. Pero basically, you can actually create an Arduino-based project using this one. Maybe some of you might be asking, Sir, paano ko i-extend ang LED ko kung gusto kong mas mahaba siya? Okay, that will be a very good question. Pakita ko sa inyo yung isang wire natin. Did you know that your Arduino kits will actually have this kind of wire? Yung male to female na to. Yung kagandahan nito, yung male to female mo, is that you can actually use this, okay, to make your LED extend. Ano, so pwede mo siyang gamitin eh. So kung gusto mong mas mahaba, ayan, di ba? Imagine, mas mahaba. Kung gusto mong mas mahaba, dagdagan mo pa ulit ng male to female wire connection. Para mas maging mahaba siya. Okay, na-gets ba natin? Hopefully, okay tayo, no? Ayan. So, pwede na kayong gumawa ng sarili nyong Christmas light, by the way. Let me show you one of my sample projects here in Tinkercad na ginawa ko rin in person. Yung, LED chase natin. Yung LED chase natin, basically, I used here 10. Okay, I used here 10 different LED. Tapos 10 resistor. Pero connected sila, same ground. Single ground lang sila connected. Parang yan, di ba? So, connected sila sa isang ground. Tapos once we start the simulation here, automatic na iilaw. Ayan, umiilaw si natin ang nag-alternate. Siyempre, hindi ko papakita yung code, no? Pero you can actually copy you can go ahead and take a screenshot of our schematic here para may idea kayo kung paano siya kapag ka-multiple na. Pero of course, the code, since ICT kayo and you are my students way back grade 11, I know, kaya nyo nang isolve yan. There are 10 LEDs lang naman. Tapos nag-alternate. Diba? My tip, use for loop. Use for loop para dito. Although meron ng void loop na method, pwede ka ulit gumamit pa ng panibagong for loop method sa loob ng void loop na yan. So, ang medyo challenge lang sa part na to is that, paano kapag ka nandito na yung LED, paano ko siya ibabalik pababa? Diba? Pabalik ulit hanggang nagbabounce siya. Yan. So, now let's talk about the lesson number 11 here in Introduction to Arduino. This is control structure. This is actually not a new topic for majority of us since you already have a knowledge of what we call the programming fundamentals natin. Now, at the end of the discussion, the student should be able to at least differentiate controls based on its structures. Now, we have here what we call the conditional control structures. Alam na naman natin to, di ba? Yung pinag-aralan natin to, grade 11 pa lang tayo. The function of conditional control structure is actually to make conditions or expression that evaluate to either true or false. They are mostly used to determine program flow through if and while statements. So number 1 here, we have the if statement. It executes any statement inside the brackets. We already know how to use this, no? Now, did you know that once you install the Arduino IDE, there is actually a built-in examples inside that. So go to File, go here sa my examples, and you can actually go ahead and use the following built-in examples here. So meron tayong, pwede natin kasing magamit tong si, asan yung ano natin? Ito, controls natin. So number 5, click on control, tapos click on if statement conditional. So mag-open si panibagong code natin for conditional conditional statement. Di ba? So, ito naman kasi, potentiometer ito. Yan. So, basically, you have an analog pin, LED pin. I-discuss ko rin naman sa inyo ang analog pin as soon as nandun na tayo. Pero, basically, the if statement here is actually working, or you can write the if statement the same way on how we write if statement in Java. Diba? Ganyan po siya. So, that's the if conditional statement. Kapag ka else, ganun din. Maglalagay ka lang din ulit ng else statement, di ba? Which is, walang else statement dito. Pero, you know the drill. You know the idea on how we add else statement. So, it looks something like this one. Else, yan. We have also while loop dito, di ba? Control, we have the while statement. Ang while loop, we also know how to use this. Yan. Di ba? Si while, it's actually being used to loop a specific statement. So, kagaya nga sabi ko kanina, inside the void loop already, you can now place another looping statement or control structures. Yan. Meron din tayong if else. Alam na rin natin to, di ba? Hindi na kasi bago sa atin ang programming kagaya nito. So, we also have the combinations or the operator combinations. We have the AND, we have the OR, and we have the logical NOT. And lastly, we have the loop statement. Okay? So, I suggest you install of course, the Arduino IDE kasi nandun po lahat ng mga codes na ginagamit natin dito sa discussions natin and dito mismo. So, if you have the Arduino starter kit, physical Arduino starter kit, I suggest na basahin mo yung code, okay? Basahin mo yung code, then try to understand how or where you can place all of those wirings sa mismong ano mo. So, in this case kasi nakalagay naman dito kung saan mo ilalagay eh. So, pag sinabi mong LED built-in, ibig sabihin yung built-in LED dito. Diba? Yung built-in LED dito ang paglalagyan mo. So, nakalagay dito sa may void setup, on top of the void setup. Diba? So, you already know the drill. Yung sa part na yan. Okay? Number 12, we have here the serial monitor. Teka, pakita ko lang. This is actually the last part of our topic, the serial monitor. Now, the serial monitor in the Arduino IDE, it is actually used for communication between the Arduino board and a computer or other devices. So, para mabuksan natin si serial monitor, pinakita ko na sa inyo to last week, no? Let's go to Tools, click on Serial Monitor lang dito. So, initially, makikita mo na yan dito. This will serve as the console pa rin. So let's go ahead and use some basic examples here. Yan, mga basic natin. Walang serial monitor na nakikita. Ito, siguro to serial event. Ayan. Diba? So, once we upload that or once we run the program, makikita na natin yung output natin dito sa may serial monitor natin. Just like what we have done last week. If you can still remember the code na ko sa inyo last week, di ba? Yung nag-input lang tayo. Now, this is actually a very, very short discussion dito. I-ano ko na yan. Yan. So, this is actually the steps on transferring of data or commands from computer to Arduino robot using the flowchart. So, first of all, you will be connecting the USB port from the Arduino robot. You will be encoding the commands. You will be uploading the sketch. And you will be clicking on the serial monitor. Tapos, a window will pop up. And next is you will be writing the command to the text window and send it back to the Arduino. So, it will now be transferred to and will be processed and sent to the Arduino board itself. So, possible na gawin natin yan in the future. No? Halimbawa, kapag gusto nating yung LED natin, i-on natin by simply typing the word on, possible na nating magawa yan in the future using the Arduino board natin. Itong serial monitor na to. So, I suggest kung para dun sa mga nakabili ng kit, kung merong mga nagbabalak, gawin yung LED nyo, yung LED na sample natin dito kanina. Tapos, try to create a program that will simply simulate the serial monitor. Tapos, on-off lang siya. So, pagka tinype mo si on, dapat mag-on din si LED mo. Pag tinype mo si off, mag-off din si LED mo. So, saan natin pwedeng gamitin yung application na yon? See, for example, kapag di ba, pag may mga voice commands na tayo, di ba? Pwede natin siyang i-apply sa ganon. So, once we say, hey Arduino, turn on the light. Pwede na nating makreate yun. Alright. So, there is a written work posted. So, madali lang naman ito. Pero let's focus here sa my performance check natin. Your performance check is actually very, very somehow challenging. You can use the Tinkercad or the physical Arduino kung meron ka man. So, all you have to do is to create an Arduino traffic light simulation using the Arduino IDE or Tinkercad. Now, your traffic light should be able to act as the following. You have two different roads, diba? You have two roads. Hindi ko muna pinahirapan sa kana kapag naglagay ako ng 4, yung intersection talaga. So at the start, green light of road number 1 and red lights at other roads will light up to give time to the vehicle at road number 1 to pass. So imagine, your breadboard here, may part ka dito na this will act as the road number 1 and this will act as the road number 2. So sa road number 1 pala, initially naka-on si green light, tapos naka-off si red light dito, naka-off si yellow. Diba? Ganon din dito, naka-on si red light, naka-off si green light, naka-off si yellow. So after 5 seconds, which is 5,000 milliseconds, the yellow light, okay, at road number 1 will light up to give an indication that the red light at road number 1 is about to come up, and also to give an indication to the vehicles at road number 2 that the green light is about to light up. So you get the idea. It's actually very easy to analyze. Basically, red, green, yellow ang pwede nyong magamit dito na colors. Okay? So just simply follow the deliverables. Magagawa nyo to, I think, within like 30 minutes. So you can use Tinkercad if you want. Now, your program should have a serial monitor active and should comprise of the control structures. Now, when I say should have a serial monitor active, that simply means that you have to put the serial monitor, the serial that begin code. Tapos dapat nakikita ko dito, dapat nakikita ko yung nangyayari. See, for example, you have the, like mag-print ka lang ng mga texts. No need for inputs. Just, I only need the printing. So, for example, red light on, diba? Or green light on, yellow light on. Tapos, nagbibilang naman yan. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gumaganyan naman yan eh. Okay? So, bahala ka kung paano mo gagamitin yan. Kung paano mo gagawin si traffic light natin. So, you have to upload the following screenshot of the Arduino sketch. When I say sketch of your Arduino, Okay? I am referring to, of course, the code. Ito. Yung code ng Arduino mo. Number 2, circuit schematics. Ito. Schematic, circuit schematics natin. And number 3, short video simulation of your program. So, syempre, kailangan ko rin makita kung nag-work yung program mo ng maayos. Okay? So, you can just, this will actually have like around 3 seconds lang. Pwede na yan. Or, I mean, 10 seconds. Para makita ko lang na gumagana talaga siya. Okay? Questions so far? Before we end the discussion? Tanong lang kayo. Alright, wala kayong question ngayon, no? Okay. Sige. I'll stay here for the meantime. So, if you have some questions, feel free to ask. Sige. If wala na, pwede nyo pong gamitin yung remaining minutes natin, the 30 minutes, to start making your performance check, which is actually an easy one to do for now. Okay? So, see you guys next week once again. I'll stay here for the meantime. Thank you so much.